All right, if you missed class today and did not get to go over the answers to this assignment with me, I'm going to go over those answers with you now. You need to read this if you haven't read it yet and answer the questions that come after. There are 7 questions. So if you haven't done that yet, please pause the video right now and go do that, and then come back to the video. So number 1, where did the Seminole Indians live? They lived along the Florida-Georgia border. If you know anything about college sports, for example, the mascot for Florida State University is the Seminole, and you may have heard of that before. That is why, because the Seminole Indians are from the Florida area. What 2 problems did the U.S. identify in Florida? Remember, Florida was owned by Spain, so let's not forget that. We owned Georgia, that's American territory, but Florida was Spanish territory. But there are some issues down there. The Seminole Indians are raiding U.S. settlements and then retreating back into Spanish territory. So they're crossing the border up into Georgia, raiding U.S. settlements, and then coming back down into Florida, which is technically not our jurisdiction. So we're having problems apprehending those people and bringing them to justice. Also, escaped slaves were hiding out in a fort in Florida, and that's making the plantation owners down in Georgia upset because that's mostly where they're coming from. They come from Georgia, they go down into Spanish territory, and they're being hidden there. Spanish people, Native Americans down there, they're all kind of working together to hide these escaped slaves, and the slave owners are getting upset about it. There are British people in Florida as well, and they are involved according to the Americans. And then the next one was just a vocabulary word that I was hoping you would use context clues or you would look up the definition. Ambiguous means it has several possible meanings or interpretations. And basically it was used here to describe the not really mixed messages, but really no messages that Andrew Jackson is getting from the president at the time, which was James Monroe. And the author here is insinuating that Monroe was being ambiguous on purpose. He was sort of leaving it up for interpretation because he probably wanted Andrew Jackson to do what he did, but he couldn't really come out and say it because he's the president. So what did Andrew Jackson do? He took 2,000 soldiers into Florida. He was never told to do so. None of his superiors told him to do this. He just took it upon himself to do it and took over a fort and the city or town of Pensacola. He also hanged 2 British people that were down there because he claimed that they were in on the things that were going on that the Americans disapproved of. Again, he had no authority to do this. None of his superiors told him to do this. He just did it. And he took 2,000 soldiers with him. So that is a major deal, and it really is an act of war. If someone had done that in our territory, a foreign country, we would have looked at that as an act of war. So he does bring us to the brink of war with Spain. John Quincy Adams, who was Secretary of State at the time, gave an ultimatum to Spain. An ultimatum is when you tell somebody you better do this or else. He tells them you better keep the people of Florida under control or we will come down there and do it for you. Again, he's telling a foreign government this. How does the story end? Spain ends up selling Florida to the United States. So basically, we are threatening to take it over by force if we have to, and Spain is having trouble governing the territory for sure. It's pretty far from the other territories that they own. It's kind of isolated, and they have a lot of problems going on down in Latin America, South America. There are some rebellions going on down there against their empire. So they're stretched very thin, and they've kind of ignored Florida, and they're not really governing it. That is true. And it was causing problems. This is true. So the United States takes advantage of that situation. They basically say, you better get it under control or we're going to come do it for you. Or you could sell it to us and not have to worry about it. So Spain ends up deciding, you know what? If they're just going to invade and take it over and we're going to get nothing out of it, we might as well just sell it. So they did for $5 million. So it's a pretty good deal. This is how Florida becomes part of the United States. Andrew Jackson suffered no punishment for his actions, even though he really did break the law and do things he was not supposed to do. In fact, they kind of reward him by making him the temporary military governor of Florida. So not only is he not punished, but he is rewarded for his bad behavior. And we all know what happens when you reward people for bad behavior. Remember this. Foreshadowing. Name the treaty that was signed between the U.S. and Spain. That was not mentioned in the reading. I wanted you to look that up. You may not have found the right answer. This is usually a tricky one for kids to find, so make sure you fix your answer if you didn't get it right. It's the Adams-Onis Treaty, named after the two people who signed it on each side. John Quincy Adams was our Secretary of State who signed it on our side, and then the Spanish minister that would have signed it, his last name was Onis. And that's it. That's how Florida becomes part of the United States. Moving on.